Reddit, what's the loneliest thing you've done? Story 1. As a child, I was a constant victim of bullying. So when the kids in my class invited me for milkshakes and fries to celebrate the first day of Christmas break, I was overjoyed. I ran home excitedly to tell my parents the good news, but when I arrived at the diner, my classmates were nowhere to be found. Terrified of facing my parents and confessing to my loneliness, I spent hours alone at the diner eating fries and sipping on my milkshake. The only comfort I could find on what should have been a happy day. The sight of couples and groups of friends around me amplified my sense of solitude. Story 2. After a prolonged period of being single, I found myself alone on Valentine's Day with no plans. All of my friends were out with their significant others, so I decided to visit a strip club in the hopes of finding some solace. One of the strippers kissed me on the cheek, leaving a red lipstick mark, and whispered, "Hope that doesn't get you in trouble." Despite the momentary solace, I ended up going home alone, getting drunk to the point of blacking out, and venting out my frustrations by trash-talking young kids on Call of Duty. The epitome of a miserable Valentine's Day. Story 3. When I discovered that my wife was cheating on me, I fell to the kitchen floor in tears. As I searched through my phone contacts, I realized I had no one to confide in or share my pain with. In that moment, I felt truly alone, without any close friends or family members to rely on. The emptiness inside me felt like a void that could never be filled. Story 4. In middle and high school, I was extremely shy and had a hard time making friends. I ate my lunch alone in bathroom stalls, hoping to avoid the attention of bullies and the shame of being seen as a loner. The silence of the bathroom stall amplified my sense of isolation, and the fear of being exposed as an outcast was overwhelming. Story 5. I accidentally sent a friend request on Facebook to the wrong person who happened to have the same name as the intended recipient. To my surprise, this person accepted my request, and I found myself following her life story and reading all of her updates. Although we never interacted and lived nowhere near each other, I became invested in her life, cheering during both of her pregnancies, feeling scared when she had to deliver one child 2 months early, crying when her husband was hurt in Afghanistan, and feeling proud when she was accepted to medical school. I had formed an imaginary friendship with an online stranger, finding comfort in her life as a way to escape my own loneliness. Story 6. After a difficult week at work and a fight with my ex, I went for a run to clear my head. It started raining and I ran too hard, eventually having to lean on a fence to catch my breath and stop myself from vomiting. As I stood there gasping for air, a person walked by with their dog. The dog stopped and looked at me, giving a half wag with its tail and tilting its head as if to ask if I was okay. Although I may have romanticized the moment, it felt like the dog was the only living thing around me that cared. In that moment, I felt incredibly alone as the dog bounded away, leaving me to walk back to my empty apartment with my thoughts. Story 7. 2 weeks ago, I had the privilege of watching the final Hobbit movie all by myself. As I scanned the theater to select a perfect seat, I found myself hesitant to take a restroom break, fearing I might miss any important details of the movie. The film was long, and as I emerged from the theater at nearly 2 a.m., I found the theater deserted, with my car being the only one in the lot. The fresh snow that had fallen was undisturbed, and the theater's frontage and interior lights were all off, giving the impression that it had been closed all along. Story 8. One night, a drunk friend of mine accompanied me to a late-night movie. However, he walked out, probably upset with something that one of my buddies said. Unbeknownst to us, he went to sit in the fancier seats up top. After the film ended, we all left the theater, failing to search for him. Apparently, the cleaners didn't locate him either. He woke up hours later, disoriented, and stumbled out of the theater, tripping multiple alarms. Eventually, he had to explain to the police why he was inside the theater at that time of night. Story 9. On New Year's Eve, I found myself alone in the house, playing Sims in the dark. I hosted a small gathering with my virtual characters, and as the ball fell, I whispered, "Happy New Year," to myself. Despite being myself, I didn't feel lonely, as playing video games is one of my favorite activities. I appreciated everyone's kindness and support, and I couldn't help but laugh as I realized how much joy my story brought to many people. Story 10. After my girlfriend left me several months ago, I stopped using my phone as much, especially for texting. While going through my contacts today, I noticed that my ex-girlfriend still had a kiss emoji next to her name. I sat for a moment, trying to figure out how to delete it while reminiscing about what I had lost. Story 11. After finishing school, I started working for my parents' business, but we fought constantly. During a particularly intense argument, I was told to go to hell. Furious, I packed a backpack and hitchhiked about 100 miles to a nearby city where I rented a room. Being from a big family, it was my first time living alone. I was so busy with work that I didn't make any friends in the first 6 months. On Christmas Day, instead of celebrating with my family and relatives, I walked alone on a silent road, peering into windows, hoping to see families enjoying each other's company. Although I eventually reconciled with my parents, got married, and had 9 children, I still treasure my memories of being alone. Story 12. As a receptionist in a large office, I spend my days alone in the front while people walk past me as though I were invisible. They only talk to me when they are in a bad mood and need someone to vent their frustrations on. For 6 months, I've been eating lunch by myself in my car every day, and the only time people acknowledge me is when they want to take out their anger on me. The experience is quite isolating, and I feel like a verbal punching bag. Story 13. When I was 18, I wanted to give my friend a pack of magic cards as a Christmas gift, but his parents despised me. I planned to surprise him a week early since I was moving out of state and wouldn't be able to see him again. However, his family had a mandatory outing, and I ended up standing alone on his doorstep, ringing the bell to an empty house. It was devastating. I hitched a ride back to my U-Haul and left the state, spending the next week alone in my new apartment. On Christmas Day, I sat across from the pack of cards and imagined my friend's presence. Then I opened the cards, marveling at their beauty, and went to bed, feeling the absence of my friend more deeply than ever. Story 14. Last year, my parents were traveling in Australia and my girlfriend was away during my birthday. I was alone, but I decided to celebrate anyway. I put on a party hat from a Christmas cracker, played games all night, and got drunk. Surprisingly, I didn't feel lonely at all. In fact, I enjoyed the experience so much that I'm considering doing it again this year. Story 15. On Christmas Eve, I confronted my father and called him out on his behavior. It led to a huge argument, and I woke up on Christmas Day knowing that I couldn't stay there any longer. I returned to my college dorm and walked straight to a nearby dive bar. By 9 a.m., the bartender and I were drinking together, and I spent the rest of the day playing pool with 2 different cues to keep track of turns. Later that night, I discovered that I'd lost my keys and had to spend the night at a Motel 6. It was a lonely day, but I'm glad I stood up for myself. Story 16. When I turned 12, my parents and siblings told me to eat my birthday cake alone, and we didn't even light the candles. I felt so lonely that I had to light the candles myself and sing happy birthday quietly while crying. It was a heartbreaking moment that I'll never forget. Story 17. I once ordered a large pizza with several sides and greeted the delivery guy with a boisterous, "Pizza's here, guys!" After paying, I retreated to my room where I ate the entire pizza by myself and played Minecraft. It was a pretty great night, and I like to imagine that the delivery guy thinks I have a vibrant social life every time he delivers to my house. Story 18. Back in elementary school, I thought I had a solid group of friends until one day they all turned on me. They wouldn't talk to me, and they avoided me like the plague. Every recess, I found myself alone in the classroom, hiding my tears behind books. Then one day, the teacher gave us a phone a friend sticker that we could use to call someone if we needed to talk. I was afraid to call, but eventually I worked up the courage to give it a try. When someone eventually answered, I spilled my heart out about being a lonely loser with no friends. The person on the other end listened, but then delivered the crushing blow. "I'm sorry, I really can't help you with that." It was one of the most devastating moments of my life, feeling rejected even by a stranger on a supposed friend hotline.